So handsome. Feet.
He karakia tātou. Kia tau te rangi Māori e kia whakatapua tātou me nā mea. E whakapono ana tātou haumi e, hui e, tāiki e. Kōhiri te manu. Tākiri mai te ata. Ka ao, ka awatia. Tihe Māori ora. E nā tangata whenua. Ngāti whātua o Tāmaki. E mihi ana kia koutou. E nā rangatira. E nā manuhiri. E nā kā rangaranga maha. Haere mai. Haere mai. Haere mai. Tēnā koutou I o tātou tine mate. Haere. 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 Te honga mate ki te honga mate. Te honga ora ki te honga ora. E nā manuhiri tuarangi. No mai, haere mai, haere mai. Haere mai ki te tēnei whare wānanga o tātou. Waipapa, taumata rau. Tēnā koutou kia koutou kua tai mai nei. Ki te tautoko, te kaupapa o tēnei rā. E tika ana te kōrero I o tātou tūpuna. Mahi I te toipoto. Kaua I te toiroa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Greetings, everybody. It's my privilege to welcome everyone today and have the opening words of the conference. Warm greetings, especially to those who have come from a warmer place than here, into the relatively cold winter that we complain about here in Auckland. So, welcome. Just a few key notes of that mihi or greeting for those who have come from overseas who have never heard anything like that before. We have 3 official languages in New Zealand. The English language, New Zealand Sign Language, and Te Reo Māori. That greeting was delivered in Te Reo Māori. And there were a couple of key points that I'll just touch on before I hand it over. One of them is the ground that the university sits on is part of a parcel of land that was gifted by Ngāti Whātua o Tāmaki, which is the local tribe or iwi. And they went up onto Mount Eden, which sits over here. And for those who come from places where there are big mountains, that's probably more like a hill to you. To us in Auckland, it's a mountain. And they stood up on there with people who wanted to have their city here in Auckland, and they pointed over to Cox's Bay, which sits over there, and down into Mechanics Bay, which sits just over here, and they went, in here, you can have your city on our land. And that's how it came to be. And that's the acknowledgement that we always have for Ngāti Whātua, for that generosity. I did make mention of all those who have contributed to our life that have passed, especially in this time of Matariki, which is the Māori New Year. We like to make sure that we acknowledge those who have contributed to our life that are no longer with us and that have passed on. And that is protocol to make sure those things are mentioned when we come together in a group such as this. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Doug Wilson. He's going to get... Oh, sorry, I've made a mistake. forgotten your name. What is it?
Liz Yeaman.
Liz. I'm going to hand it over to Liz. Sorry, Liz. And she will take proceedings from here. Ngā mihi nui, kia koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And welcome everybody. I'm Liz Yeaman. I'm your MC for today. For those of you who are wondering a little bit about me, I'm an engineer and I work in a kind of adjacent industry. I actually work in transport and how it links through to the energy system in an intelligent way at the moment. I've come from somewhere even colder than this. I'm currently based down in Wanaka, where I'm operating the Queenstown vehicle-to-grid trials. That involves communication protocols which are interoperable between vehicles and infrastructure. It means communication protocols between charging stations and the electricity system as a whole, a big national infrastructure that spans our whole country that we're all completely dependent on for our everyday. It involves sending time of use pricing signals through to end users to encourage them to change their behaviour and to benefit from them and benefit all New Zealanders to do with that. So there are fantastic parallels between what you are working on here today, and I'm really hoping to listen and find out things about this adjacent industry. And it's one of those things about a conference. We all come together. There are people here we know we want to catch up with. There are subjects that we know well we want to hear more about. But there's also those opportunities to listen to people we haven't met before, to find out about adjacent areas that might influence what we do, and to meet new people that widen our networks, our business opportunities, and our friendships. That's one of the exciting things about a conference. So welcome to all of you for that, and I hope you get those kind of things out of the conference as I'm hoping to do. First of all, technology. Switch your phones off now. I want to see everybody move to look at their phone to make sure you have put it on silent. And if you haven't, to switch it off right now so that we can all focus on what's happening here today. If there is an emergency while we're here, we will hear loud, continuous bells. If you hear that, move up to the exits that are signposted. There will be event staff people and a room facilitators that will help you do that, and move outside to Simon Street and we will gather there. The toilets are just outside this lecture theatre, just behind us here that way, from whichever way you're facing. And for those of you who are at the back, come on down to the front. This is where the action is happening. Come and be part of it, and also leave some space for latecomers to come in later. So come on down, there's plenty of seats down here, and make yourselves comfortable. I'd now like to hand over to Doug Wilson, who is head of the Transport Research Centre here at our wonderful hosts, the University of Auckland. Thank you, Doug.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Doug Wilson toko ingoa. E mahi ana ahau he kaipakahare mō te Transportation Research Centre me te ITS New Zealand Aotearoa. Te aranga o Hauhaha me te Waipapa Taumatarau o Tamaki Makaurau Aotearoa New Zealand nau mai, hari mai ki TTech26 hui. So I'll let you look at the translation on that. I'm not going to go through that again, but I would like to just value what Steve, and thank you kapai to Steve Roberts for giving us an introduction in Māori to the sort of protocols that we have in New Zealand. Many of you in New Zealand will understand that and know that, but to our international guests, it's a pleasure to be able to highlight our Indigenous population, Māori in New Zealand, and the great generosity they gave to us. So with Tamaki Makaurau, as has been mentioned, our special relationship with the university, as well as with Ngāti Whātua o Rāke as the iwi and the hapu of this area. And it's a great privilege to be able to be on these lands that were gifted from that aspect of it. So I'm just going to get next slide. The clicker, okay, we're going to get, there we go. So Transportation Research Centre, I'm just going to give a brief introduction to that. You'll see our mission there, which is quite a long mouthful, but I think it's an important one, is our mission is to, and I direct the Transportation Research Centre here at the university, is to deliver research that enables an efficient, effective, affordable, safe and sustainable transportation system. Importantly, not stopping there. We can unpack each of those words that are very important, but the why we are there for is to empower thriving, resilient, equitable communities in Aotearoa, New Zealand and beyond. And I think that aspect is so important when we think about what the conference is about in the next few 3 days. Sorry, I was concluding yesterday, 2 days now, that we're here to enable opportunities for people. That's the whole idea of a transport system, is to give that enabling, whether that's economic, cultural, recreational or social, in regards to that mobility. So technology obviously covers all sorts of different aspects, and as a TRC, as a theme, we have 4 main themes, and you will see obviously that the theme that we're mostly focusing on is this intelligent transport systems and future systems. However, you can see touching points across all of those other themes in regards to transport sustainability, emissions reductions, safety, well-being and livability, for example, and also the infrastructure, the climate resilience and our resilience to climate change. So all of those things are important, but I want to make it the point that technologies are not there for themselves. We need to be technology agnostic. The idea of what we're trying to be here and looking at in the next few days is what does that enable people to do? And we have to be very careful to always remind ourselves that when we're looking at ITS, intelligent transport systems, and there's a good point there, is how intelligent is our transport systems? We're hopefully becoming more intelligent, but why? Because again, we want to ensure that we're providing opportunities for the communities that we live in ourselves and that we're offering these impacts for. And that's a very important part to remember those key issues. What are the key issues? Who gains the benefits? And we want that to be as equitable as possible across our communities. So we need to think about already the ones that are mobility disadvantaged, and does our technologies enable better opportunities for that group as well, because we do not want to have an outcome where technologies serve certain groups as opposed to others. So I think from a New Zealand standpoint, everybody will understand that, but at the moment in the world we seem to see polarisation of those things, and the benefits are going to certain people and not others. And so we don't want to have that system. We need to ensure that our systems are also affordable, they are efficient, and so affordability comes from a country. Somebody has to pay. So when we talk about road user charges, all of these aspects, who pays, who gets the benefits, and who is enabled are really important questions that we are going to be obviously discussing a lot in the next 2 days. So with that, thank you very much for coming along. It's a pleasure to have you again at Waipapa Taumata Road, the University of Auckland. It's been our 3rd year in a row. We've been offering this together with ITS New Zealand, and I'm on the board with ITS New Zealand. I do want to make the point, this is a forerunner of a much bigger event next year, so please make sure you all book in already to come to the ITS Asia Pacific Forum in May next year, where it's much bigger. It's at the International Convention Centre. Unfortunately, we can't run it at the university. It's going to be far bigger. You need to be there. So please book that in your dates now, the 3rd to the 5th of May, if I'm right, 2027. With that, I would like to pass over to Anthony. Anthony Dixon is our chair of the ITS New Zealand, and it's a great pleasure to have you again on Waipapa Taumata Road, Anthony.
Thanks, Zach.
Put your hands together.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Stephen, Liz and Doug, for your warm welcome and opening remarks. On behalf of the ITS New Zealand board, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to TTech26. I want to start by thanking the ITS New Zealand board, a group who contribute so much of their time entirely voluntarily for the benefit of our members. Amongst our keynotes, sponsors and delegates this morning, I also want to give a special thanks to those who have travelled internationally to be here, including members of the ITS Australia board and leadership team. I want to acknowledge the University of Auckland, who've now supported us in hosting this conference for 3 years running. and particularly their events team for all the behind-the-scenes work that goes into making this conference happen. And to acknowledge the substantial benefit in being able to use these facilities, I'm pleased to announce that ITS New Zealand will be donating $5,000 towards registration tickets for students wishing to attend next year's Asia Pacific Forum. Our intention being that they will be motivated to bring their innovation and success stories to the forum stage next year. Of course, none of this happens without our sponsors. Thank you to Cubic, Q-Free and CSA for sponsoring social events this year, and to all 23 sponsors participating in TTech26, an absolute record for this conference. I want to acknowledge the effort of all our speakers today and tomorrow, especially those who've presented at TTech before and keep coming back to share their knowledge. And a big high five to this year's debut speakers. And of course, our sincere thanks to every individual and organisation who submitted an abstract this year. As you'll hear from many of us throughout today, ITS New Zealand is hosting the Asia Pacific Forum in May 2027 here in Auckland. This is a premium event, and we're extremely proud to be hosting it. For anyone considering attending, we challenge you to start thinking now about how you can drive innovation on that stage. Bring your best case studies, your product launches, your research, your policy, and your wallet. That's right, we want you to enjoy everything Auckland has to offer as consistently one of the top 10 livable cities in the world. And get ready to soak up world-class ITS solutions being shared by private sector, public sector, and academic institutions from Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, Indonesia, Japan, China, Malaysia, India, and Thailand. It's going to be an outstanding showcase of what our region is achieving in transport technology, and we can't wait to host it. Finally, it's my great pleasure to introduce Kim Mundell, our Executive Officer, running her very first TTech event, which is already a record breaker, both in the number of delegates and in sponsorship revenue. So thank you to Kim and your amazing team, including Rose Harding and Brittany Owens. Welcome.
Thanks everyone, thanks for the great welcome. Doug, I love the university already. Look at this, it's the shortest lectern I've ever stood at. I think it's about the first time anyone's been able to see me when I've presented for the last decade. Oh, Carol appreciates it. Thank you, Carol. Yeah. I met Carol yesterday. It was like meeting a kindred spirit from the short world. It was wonderful. But look, I'm really enjoying my time here. It's been about 6 months so far, a bit of a whirlwind. Really enjoying my time with ITS. I've learnt an entirely new set of acronyms. I've just come out of the technology space for the last decade in the health sector. So there's been acronym soup over there as well. But you've taken it to a whole new level now. I'm having to learn a whole new set. So thank you for that. How do I move that? That? No? Where's the clicker? Oh, that would help, wouldn't it? Right. Look, I'd encourage everyone, particularly in the build-up to next year's ITS AP Forum, it's going to be vital that we put our best foot forward as a nation, and we can't do that without your support. So if you haven't joined or you're thinking of joining, we would really appreciate you helping us make New Zealand look great on the world stage. Every little bit helps. Obviously, we're a not-for-profit association. We can do more to support you and your profession if you support us. So thank you. And don't worry, you'll be hearing more about that from me over time. Asia Pacific Forum, very excited, as Doug and Anthony said, to be hosting this prestigious event next year. And of course, thankfully, we now have a brand new, opened in February, New Zealand International Convention Centre to host it in. About 8 years ago, I bid for a big international, a world congress actually, in a different sector, that was going to come here, and we had one that we won the bid, and then the centre burnt down, and we ended up having to run it in Australia, so that was a little bit of a blow. So I'm very excited to finally get the opportunity to use the new convention centre. As Doug said, and so did Anthony, this is a great opportunity for us to be there. We really want you to be there. And in order to encourage you to be there, I have worked with the board, and thank you for allowing me to do it. I've invented a whole new option for you. This is a limited edition pass, which is only being announced to you here today. That's the QR code to get to the website if you want to scan it. Hint, hint, and also the web address. It's open now. You don't even have to pay anything today because it takes you through and you just say yes to everything and then we invoice you later, right? It's really simple. I've tried to set it up as simply as possible. And this is a little unusual because we are releasing this for you today. It's lower than the speaker rate and lower than any early bird rate you will see ever again. Right? So you're knowing about it first, you're in the know. This is designed for you, the locals here in New Zealand. It's been designed for. So if you're thinking of putting in a submission, don't wait, you'll pay more later. Register now before the 31st of July and you will get this wonderful rate. If you've got any questions at all, I'm going to be based downstairs in the expo hall behind the banners. We're sort of under the stairs. Think of us as Harry Potter. We live under the stairs. So just look for us down there. Myself, my wonderful team. I'd like to thank Brittany, the sponsorship superstar, who anyone who's a commercial vendor will have been hounded by, and Rose, who's our slightly more invisible but incredible powerhouse operations person. Rose and Britt and I work on many association events together, so we're very excited to be working in a brand new space in the transport sector. And with that, I'll hand back to Liz. Thank you very much.
So it's my pleasure now to introduce our opening address, which is Anthony Dixon. Sorry. There's a little mistake on the form here. Andy Dixon, Andrew Barker from Auckland Council. Font is slightly small here. Please welcome him to come and join us for the opening address.
Thank you, Liz. I'll put that away because I have absolutely no technology at all. So we'll put that there. Greetings, everyone, and wonderful to be here. My name's Andy Baker, and I am on Auckland Council. I'm the councillor for Franklin, so down the far end of Auckland, and I'm also the chair of the Transport and Infrastructure Delivery Committee, which oversees our capital delivery program across council. So a little bit on. It is a real pleasure and a privilege to be asked to be here at TTech26 this morning. I just want to acknowledge Anthony, Kim and the team at ITS, University of Auckland, and everyone who's made this conference possible. I bring the apologies of Mayor Wayne Brown, who disappointed that he not able to nail a hat trick and opening the conference this year due to other commitments. He thoroughly enjoys getting along and talking technology. Anyone that has heard the Mayor speak will know that he is a fan of technology. He's just launched his own 100 Days of Tech, where every day he posts on his well-followed and often trolled social media platforms about a new tech startup company in Auckland. If you follow him on any of his social platforms, you may have seen his typically funny opening post with Sir Peter Beck chatting on the phone and ending with Brownie on a megaphone on the council building's helipad 30 stories above the CBD. He loves to be heard. With him opening the conference for the last 2 years, I thought I should check in with his office to see what he had spoken about previously, to see if there were any specific updates that I could provide on issues that he spoke about. I should have known better. Having written speech notes generally gives him something to do with his hands while he heads off down all manner of subject rabbit holes about all of the dumb things that he found and existed in council before he came along. So my only update is that he is still finding things he believes are dumb, many currently related to the soon-to-open CRL and Harbour Crossing. I do apologise that you won't get a steady flow of throwaway or quotable comments from me or any, oh my God, did he really say that moments. Seriously though, I do want to acknowledge Wayne's unrelenting desire to utilise technology and his leadership in this area. He spends a great deal of his time looking for and supporting technology that he believes will create positive benefits from Auckland, or for Auckland, and elsewhere, and has really applied political pressure to the council across its whole family to adopt more technology. I'm told there is a record number of attendees at this conference. I will tell the Mayor that I've attracted the largest crowd. However, I know he will look forward to May 2027 when Auckland hosts the ITS Asia Pacific Forum in our incredible new convention centre, and I believe that Auckland Transport and Tautaki Auckland Unlimited have done a little deal with conferences so you can get a public transport pass for any conferences that are coming, so may well be something to look at. From a personal perspective, I am continually amazed and excited about technology. I recently bought a car that I was told is the first to be designed completely by AI. I reckon I will understand about 60% of what it does when I come to sell it in a few years. The irony of me opening a conference about technology is not lost on me or my wife or my adult tech-savvy children. Auckland is growing and changing at an incredibly fast pace. The region's population is now over 1.8 million people. The urban areas of the city account for around 1.55 million of that, and successive governments have told us that they want higher density and more intensification in our urban areas, and in particular around our public transport hubs and inner city suburbs that are well serviced by public transport. That creates increasing public expectations that we, the local political leaders and the organisations we govern, will respond to the challenges we collectively face and make decisions that are beneficial for all Aucklanders. Building new infrastructure will alone not work. We cannot afford it, and our geographic shape and features make it extremely difficult. We have to enhance what we already have. The use of technology provides those opportunities, particularly with transport. We must get more from our existing transport network. The use of technology improves network performance, improves decision making, enables us to respond more quickly to incidents, including severe weather events, and it makes us a more modern city, footing it with other cities we measure ourselves against around the world. In recent years, we have upped the level of investment in technology across the council family as we look to be more effective both in time and money. The greatest challenge is gaining the trust of an often sceptical community and political and organisational leaders. We can do that by demonstrating in tangible ways that innovation in technology is responsive, delivers benefits far quicker in a cost-effective way, enables us to move ourselves and goods around this region better, and enables us to look at how, where and why we plan for things to be built or to happen. So that we are doing in Auckland with transport-related technologies to gain people's trust and demonstrate technology's use. We are doing a lot of it. One of the Mayor's favourite bugbears is how our intersections function, in particular within the CBD where he lives and works. They cannot hide. AT is investing in advanced detection technology at around 100 advanced detection sites operating across Auckland. They are deploying the technology at signalised intersections where sensors and cameras detect vehicles, cyclists, pedestrians and even scooters in real time to provide better understanding of demand at those intersections. This reduces unnecessary delays, improves traffic flows through being able to adjust signal timings in response to actual conditions and making intersections safer. Bus booster technology was something we found when we asked that actually existed in many modern buses and at intersections. It just needed to be turned on. You may have heard this in speeches from the Mayor because it was certainly one of the things that he described as dumb. More and more buses are now able to communicate with traffic signals as they approach intersections, meaning when appropriate, the bus will be provided priority through green light extensions or reduced red light wait times. Our buses and commuters benefit through more reliable services by keeping our buses moving and on time. Latest data shows this sort of technology is working, with 91.8% of buses being recorded as being on time against a target of 89%. Not bad when during the last completed financial year, bus patronage hit 66 million for the year. This relatively small tech intervention actually provides a benefit to tens of thousands of Aucklanders every day through our current network of about 150 bus booster sites. We are currently assessing an AI pilot for traffic signal optimisation. As one of our more recent tech trials, we are undertaking pilots at 2 high traffic volume sites to explore how machine learning and AI can support semi-automated signal optimisation. Technology can test thousands of network scenarios and identify in real time optimisation opportunities, and in simulations, travel time improvements of 9% were identified. Technology is supporting and enhancing human decision-making rather than replacing it. CMS, or Streetlight Central Management Systems, have transformed streetlight management through its implementation across our rather large streetlight network. The platform provides near real-time visibility of network performance, which enables proactive fault detection and efficient maintenance planning. It has resulted in an end to routine night patrols, checking to see if lights were working, and from an elected representative, the loss of late night messages to tell me a street light is out. It did happen. With an associated move to LED lights, the system has generated $11 million in annual savings. That equates to about 0.5% of rates, as well as reduction in emissions of around 4,600 tonnes of CO2 every year. In 2023, Auckland experienced 2 extreme weather events in pretty short order. People died, homes and properties were destroyed or severely damaged. It is costing billions across Auckland and across Auckland Council and central government on mitigations and property buyouts. Historic planning rules have been put under the spotlight so we don't get caught out again. And across Auckland, Council and AT have put in place 9 early flood warning system pilot schemes to help communities and emergency services understand risk and enable better response to flooding risks. Sensors detect rising water levels and activate warning signs in the spots where roads and water intersect. CCTV provides real-time monitoring, which means staff do not need to head into flooded areas to make assessments. Our staff are safer, and we also have time efficiency benefits. During our weather event in January, 8 of the 9 systems detected flooding, alert systems were triggered, roads were closed, and the public alerted. Following those tragic 2023 weather events, AT's Science and Sustainability team developed a landslide susceptibility framework to assess the road network for landslide vulnerability. It was applied to the entirety of our over 8,000 kilometres of road network and was identified where road corridors are susceptible to slips, which enables preventative works and informs long-term resilience planning across 3, 10 and 30-year work programs. The Climate Resilience and Asset Management System helps integrate climate hazards into future design decisions, and with preventative interventions, it is estimated to cost between 15 to 30% of the total cost of recovery works. This type of approach obviously delivers better long-term value for Auckland ratepayers and a safer way of managing road assets, as well as informing private landowners of risks. The framework combines hazard locations, slope measurements, drain patterns, soil conditions and other environmental data to provide the understanding of vulnerability. This project received the Institute of Public Works Engineering Australasia Excellence in Project Innovation Award this year for its data-driven approach to asset management and resilience. We are a city with a major airport and a port that primarily deals in imports. Our road network carries most of the freight into, out of and around the region. This contributes significantly to our famous congestion, so we are working hard on mitigating that congestion through data-driven freight planning. By using advanced freight data modelling, we are able to better understand how goods move around Auckland. That information is being used to refresh our strategic freight network thinking, along with that of NZTA and their highway network. I couldn't finish up, however, without touching on a couple of major initiatives that are working alongside the government in technology. For all the wrong reasons, they have had a bit of mainstream and social media attention just of recent times. I did promise Anthony I would go easy on the national ticketing solution. There is obviously no doubt that NTS has huge benefits for the whole country. Yet I have been quoted in and talked in the media about my frustration at the length of time it is taking. We have an extremely good, well-used and well-understood hop card system here in Auckland. We own and use the data collected through that system to ensure our PT is fit for purpose. We can deliver the concessions Aucklanders want and enjoy. Of all the things AT has delivered over the years, public transport is one of, if not the, absolute shining light. We cannot allow the standards and services to slip when NTS comes online because Aucklanders will not accept it. So I want to take this opportunity, with many involved in NTS being here in the room, to challenge you to get it sorted. Our days of pumping money into HOP whilst we are waiting for NTS cannot continue. So please, let's get Motu Move moving. And finally, I loop back to our congestion. It is estimated to be costing us $2.6 billion a year in lost efficiencies. According to the 2024 TomTom Auckland Traffic Report, out of 500 global cities, Auckland Central was the 77th worst congested city of 500. Time of use charging, an internationally tested and successful tool when combined with other initiatives, has been enabled through rare cross-party support in Parliament. At every step of the way, got close last week, but at every step of the way, Council has supported working on how best we might initiate a scheme. Since first committing to investigate time of use charging, we have analysed numerous different schemes from around the world against our unique conditions and needs. We are now in the process of refining them down to a short list, which will be coming to my Transport and Infrastructure Delivery Committee meeting in August, all going to plan. At that meeting, whilst I think the ride may get a bit bumpy on the day, we should decide which scheme or schemes we will ask the public of Auckland about in the context of trying to reduce our congestion. International evidence shows that where time of use charging has been implemented and retained, the gains have been significant. We cannot build our way out of congestion problems we have. We need to have a toolbox full of tools, including time of use charging, attractive, accessible and affordable public transport, and a willingness to utilise and trust transport technology to get the best out of our existing transport networks, whatever mode they might be. Whatever we do in the future, there is no doubt that Auckland will have an ever-increasing relationship with transport technology. Our challenge for everyone in this room is how do we take the people of Auckland along with us for the journey. Again, thank you for allowing me to kick your conference off. I'm sure you will have a wonderful couple of days, and there will be so much more information available from people around who know so much more about it than I do. I hope those who call Auckland home proudly show it off, and to our visitors, enjoy the greatest little city in the world. Thank you very much for being here and for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Andy, and also thank you again for stepping in for Simon Bridges last night as well. I'm going to introduce a couple of bits of tech that we're going to be using here at TTech. We have a Slido app to ask questions. We will not be having a roving microphone at this conference. We will be using the Slido app to ask questions of the people on the panel, the people that you've heard speak, and in the Q&A sessions. You can put in a question, you can read other people's questions, and you can upvote them. So if somebody's already put in a question that's pretty similar to what you're going to ask, upvote it so that it comes up to the top of the list and becomes one of the ones. You only get one vote, though. You can't keep pressing the button. So that's one piece of tech that we are using. If you need to use the Wi-Fi, there is Wi-Fi guest access there. You can get to Slido either through the QR code or by going to slido.com and putting in the code that's there if for some reason you can't quite get the QR code working. We also have the TTech app. Now, everyone who's registered to attend would have got an email from Donna this morning that links through to the TTech app. We're trying to keep this as paperless as possible, so you will find the conference program, information about the speakers, information about our wonderful sponsors, the people who are exhibiting downstairs so that you can contact them. So go to the TTech app and download that and have a look, and we'll keep this technology being the focus of how we are running this conference. So once you've got that ready, I will have a chance to introduce our next speaker, Carol Schweizer, who is Schweiger, sorry, I got it perfectly right before, from Schweiger Consulting in the States, who is going to talk us on a very important aspect of kind of universal design in ITS, embedding accessibility, inclusion, diversion, and equity into ITS. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. Just a couple of things to get out of the way early on. Kim, if you're in the room, thank you for the short discussion. Usually I'm behind a podium and people can only see the top of my head. So this is all a good thing. Also, I did come from a very, very hot climate. When I left home, I live on the East Coast of the US. It was about 40 degrees, and that's centigrade. So coming here, I was so excited that the weather was going to be more to my liking. Anyway, thank you so much for inviting me and for allowing me to talk about a topic that we need to keep reminding ourselves about in technology. So most of my discussion is actually not going to be about technology, but about the things that we really need to be thinking about as we're designing technology. And we actually need to be thinking about these things throughout the whole process. Not only when we start a project, but as we go throughout an implementation. We typically, when I go many years back into ITS, in fact, before we called it ITS, we never asked people, well, what is it that you want? What would make it work for you? We were so excited by the technology, we forgot to ask people, what works for you? What doesn't work for you? Are we excluding people? So this gives you an idea of briefly what I'm going to speak about today. So when I think about equity in ITS, I think about three specific things. People who have heard me talk about this before probably have seen these same three bullets because it's a good way to describe what we need to be thinking about. If we don't think about what people need, we're wasting a lot of time. We're making technology that's not going to be tremendously useful. And we've left a lot of people out of the picture. Also, we do a lot of surveying. And when we do questionnaires and surveys to find out what people are experiencing with technology, we may be asking actually the wrong questions. And then we get the results, and we're using those results to design technology. But did we ask the right people? And did we ask the right questions? So that's another thing to sort of keep in the back of your mind. And then finally, this is a question that I keep asking constantly. How do we know if we've done a good job in equity and technology? And the one thing that's often missing is, well, how do we measure that? And that's not an easy question to answer at all, but something that I'll talk about toward the end of my presentation. But something that I really thought would be appropriate at the very beginning of this, as usual, we're in sort of a world of constant changes in transport. And I think it's important for us to recognize that as we are talking about equity. So one thing that I'm seeing across the world is we're really no longer just talking about traffic congestion. That used to be the thing that we were trying to solve. We're now talking about mobility and the flow of mobility. What does that mean? It means that we're concerned about the performance of our public transport system. We're concerned about the use of things like bike sharing, scooter sharing, people walking. And so we've added that to the picture. So it's no longer just about cars and congestion. AI. Back in, 2 years ago at the ITS World Congress in Dubai, we heard a lot about AI, but people were using that term to discuss things that really weren't any smarter than what we were doing before. They were using AI because it was the buzzword of the day. The good news now is we know what AI is. We know how it can be very helpful in ITS. And so we're trying to incorporate that. I'm going to give you some examples of where we shouldn't just rely on AI solely, but we should combine it with our sort of human knowledge. And finally, over the last few years, there's been a lot of discussion, and unfortunately not enough of a discussion from home, but throughout the world on co-creation. And what does that mean? It means bringing people to the table who are going to be using the technologies that we're designing, bringing them in from the very beginning, not bringing them in at the end and saying, so does this work for you? And if the answer is no, how are you going to react to that? It's bringing them in at the beginning and using that group of people throughout the entire process of designing and implementing. And I'll give you several ideas about that. So this first slide is from a webinar that I recently helped moderate. It's a European project that's called Hidden. And the reason why that's the name of the project is that AI doesn't do everything we need it to do in terms of connected, cooperative, and automated mobility. So think about automated vehicles, for example. And everybody thinks that the technology that is used with automated vehicles is foolproof, but it's not. And there are several situations where it can actually be very dangerous if there are factors in our cities that make people hidden from view, hence the name of the project. So the reason why I show this slide is, as I'm saying throughout the presentation, technology alone is not enough. Who's going to be using it? And we need to incorporate the social aspect of technology. And that's really what this slide is saying. The diversity in people who are going to be using the technology. And we need to recognize upfront the risks that we're taking if we don't bring these people to the table at the beginning. Another project, which is called Inclusive Spaces, you can imagine what that is about. And they sort of reported several different kinds of risk. Again, if we just utilize technology without looking at human behavior, attitudes, trust with the technology, etc. And one of their sort of solution, looking at specific solutions, was for the built environment. How were most cities developed? They were developed for typically one kind of user, someone who can easily walk and get around from one place to another. And we weren't really concerned about a lot of obstacles. And that's what this particular project, another European Commission-funded study called Just Streets, we designed the city kind of like when we designed automobiles and crash worthiness. That was all geared toward a male of a certain height. And so we designed the city really for only one kind of individual, not all of the people who live in a city. So I wanted to give you some approaches. This is somewhat of a deep dive, so I apologize for going into this so early in the morning, but it kind of reinforces some ideas that I think are important. There's another European project called SMALL, and that's really looking at shared mobility and how do we design shared mobility systems. And I really thought this had the best approach to incorporating humans into the design process. And here you can see from the very beginning, they're bringing the right people to the table. So those people who are learning about the project can express what their concerns are about this type of project. So that's the first step, co-identify. Bring those people to the table so that they're part of the project throughout. And then we bring them together in workshops and focus groups to help define what measurements are we going to use to make sure that when we're done designing the technology, that it actually works for different groups of people who are going to be utilizing it. So that's at the bottom, the co-develop part. Then we want to use this same group of people to really get the word out about the project so people are aware of it. How many of these projects do we work on where we're doing technology design and no one knows about it until we're ready to implement it? So we need to utilize the people that are helping us with the design. So that's the co-implement step. Evaluation. This is where we actually start using the KPIs that we developed early on in the project with the people who are going to be utilizing the technology, and we start measuring how are we doing. And we get the word out about using this technology. So one example that I think a lot of you have heard about over the last 10 years is mobility as a service. How many people know what that means? So some people remember about 11 or 12 years ago, that was the hottest thing in ITS. We're going to build this app. It's going to have every mobility service on it, and everybody's automatically going to use it because we developed the best app. What happened? Didn't go exactly the way it was planned. So it's not if you build it, they will come. They didn't come. And we learned a lot. That's the good news. Over the years, we've learned a lot, and there have been more recent projects that have taken this kind of approach to make sure that it is going to work for everybody who's traveling within a region. So I already mentioned this hidden project, and interestingly enough, they took the same approach as the previous project, where they brought in the right people at the very beginning. And there's a lot of documentation on these projects, by the way, that I'll mention in a little bit. But they brought the right people in at the very beginning, the sort of co-identify or the first phase, and they continued to use these people. The project is still in process, so I can't tell you anything about the exact results, but it's a multi-dimensional project team with a lot of social scientists, which I'm just thrilled to see. A couple of other approaches that I think are particularly interesting as we bring in the social sciences and the equity piece to design is, one of them is called backcasting. What does that mean? It means instead of starting from where we are now, what happens when you start from today's world and you say, I want to look at something that's 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead? You're often biased by what's going on today. You're constraining your thinking. Well, I know we tried this and it never worked, so I'm not going to suggest that. So a way to kind of open up your mind is to start in the future and start thinking, what do I want that solution to look like? If you start there and work your way back, you're probably going to have a much better design. So this was one approach that I recently heard about at the 2026 ITS European Congress, which was just held in April, and I was fortunate enough to be there. So this is kind of for people who like charts. This is what it looks like. We're starting at how do we visualize what we're building? What is it going to look like when it's completely done? And then start working our way backwards as to how we best design it. Another interesting approach, and this is a bit more scientific, and there are actually a lot of steps here. For the sake of time, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time here, but this is using personas. And it's studying people's behavior, attitudes, and thoughts about technology, and turning that into very, very useful information that can be applied, again, throughout a technology design. So, for example, in this first bullet, personas really should be based on real-world data, such as surveys that actually capture attitudes, behaviors, priorities of people using the technology, and looking at the diversity of the use of that technology. And then there are different techniques for clustering that information from a scientific perspective. And then we want to look at variables across different thematic dimensions in travel priority. So these different groups are going to be looking at travel differently. Am I just concerned about the cost of travel? Am I just concerned about the reliability of my trip? Are there other factors that I'm concerned about? So these are the basic categories of the parts of personas that would be very, very helpful to use. So that's another approach that we can use in our design. In the hidden project, which I've mentioned a couple of times already, one of the key approaches in this project is to bring in human behavior as well as AI. And they're calling that hybrid intelligence, which makes a lot of sense. One aspect of that is having the human in the loop so that the AI can continually learn what people's attitudes, behavior, trust of the technology is. It also provides enhanced situational awareness, particularly when we're talking about automated vehicles, which is what this project is primarily focused on. And using humans to validate what the AI is saying. That's another thing we don't do very well when we're designing ITS systems. So this is another approach that's being used. And then there's a project called Cultural Road, another European Commission-funded study, which, from the name of it, you can imagine, it's taking into account equity, diversity, inclusion. In technology design, it's developing technology tools for any kind of traveler. And their approach was, again, to bring the diverse groups to the table at the very beginning and then continue to use those people throughout the design process. So there, you want to talk about alphabet soup in acronyms. There are too many to mention. I've mentioned several of them here, but I did want to bring to light one particular approach from the US that started probably 4 or 5 years ago, and we're continually working on improving it, and that's called the complete trip. That's the only non-European project in this laundry list of projects that are actually using co-creation and have a very strong focus on equity. What does the complete trip mean? When you make a trip, there's an origin. There are then modes that you use, maybe one, maybe more than one. you could be walking somewhere, you could be walking to a bus stop, taking a bus, going somewhere, and then reaching your final destination. What happens if in the middle of your trip you're unable to, let's say, use a certain kind of technology? Let's say you board a bus and somehow you're not able to pay the fare. Your trip can't be completed. So what we've looked at are all of the various steps that someone is taking throughout their trip. And there are always a lot more of them than we generally think about, because a lot of us, when we make a trip, we may have made that trip numerous times, and we don't think about all the transition points along the way. But if, for example, we had a disability, maybe a physical disability, we're very much made aware of every transition in that trip. And if one of those transitions doesn't work, you can't make the trip. So the whole idea of the complete trip is to look at every transition, but look at ensuring that if technology is being used at all those transitions, that it's accessible to everyone. A lot of our focus in the US has been on low-income individuals, people who don't have smartphones. If you say that somebody needs to use a card, for example, a smart card, to access public transport, you're forcing them to use something that they may not feel comfortable with, or they can't place enough money on that card to be able to use it for public transport. We also have a lot of people with no bank accounts. So very early on, we were kind of focused on those issues. But now we have more technology, and we need to be more concerned about all the technology at all those transition points. So I come to equity measurement. So there are a lot of, let me skip ahead here for just a moment. I did a study a couple of years ago looking at who's measuring equity in ITS. And not a lot of projects were doing that. Not a lot of people were doing that at all. I came up with this list. And the issue that I saw is that they were just focused on some very specific aspect of equity. And it would be very hard to actually utilize almost any of these frameworks to measure how well we were doing unless we were just focused on, for example, gender equality. There's a couple of frameworks that just measure that, but that perhaps we're not looking at other equitable factors. So when I took a look at what was available out there, I talked with several different people in the ITS industry about this, and we sort of said, well, we need to be asking a lot of questions about the existing frameworks because a lot of them just don't seem to work very well, or they're only focused on one thing. So I think we need to ask these questions. How can we determine if equity has been adequately considered in ITS design? What does that mean? Goes back to something I said earlier. Have the right people in the room when you are determining how to measure equity toward the beginning of a project. That's one way of doing it. What tools can we use to make this measurement? And again, one of the European projects that is putting forth an equity framework that actually has a couple of tools associated with it is here on the right. It's that Cultural Road project, and they have a 5-point star. So they're looking at acceptance of the technology, which is a huge factor in equity in technology in general, inclusiveness, optimizing the network, the transport network, not just looking at traffic congestion, but looking at other types of shared mobility. What kind of psychological factors do we need to take into account? I was mentioning before attitudes about technology. For example, trust in technology. We need to take those things into account. And then probably the most important factor is safety. And so this particular project is looking at equity from those 5 perspectives. And again, that project has not completed yet, so I will be adding their framework once the project is completed. But we need to sort of have this continual evaluation of these different frameworks. Is there any room for improvement? For example, can we improve upon this 5-star approach once it's actually being used? So we need to have a feedback loop to go back and ask those questions. And how are we actually using these tools? So in this webinar that I recently helped moderate in this hidden project, I thought this one slide kind of encapsulates everything that I was thinking about when I was putting this presentation together. So we can say all the right words about looking at the social sciences and incorporating them into our ITS design process. But what are the insights that actually drive incorporating the social sciences? One is over-trusting technology. You know, we need to take a step back and again, bring the human into the picture. We have vulnerability of different groups of people who are utilizing these technologies. And many of those are vulnerable populations. So we need to have that in the forefront. Behavior. It's very hard, for example, to get people out of their single occupant vehicles. They may live in an area where there are not a lot of options. Like, for example, where I live in the suburbs, and I would prefer not to have a car, but I have to have one because every so often I have to go to the supermarket and buy several 10-pound bags of cat litter. Not easy to handle if you're on a bike or or a scooter. So that's not going to work. But my behavior, because I am a public transport person, at heart is, wow, I would rather take public transport than drive to where I'm going. But that's kind of rare. So we need to continually remind ourselves that behavior isn't just going to change if we put some wow, gee whiz technology out there. We now have the complexity of mobility flow. We not just have cars, people crossing streets. we've got scooters, we've got bicycles, we've got people in wheelchairs, we have people who have visual impairments. It's a very complex environment, so we need to keep that in mind. And as I mentioned early on, there are a lot of risks if we exclude these populations. And then how do we enforce making sure that the people that are most vulnerable are able to utilize the technology? So that's also part of the picture. So just a couple of thoughts about concluding my presentation. These are some quotes that I recently heard at the ITS European Congress. And I thought they really aptly talk about this whole area of equity in ITS design. Vulnerable road users shouldn't be edge cases. That's how we've always viewed them. But we shouldn't be viewing them that way. They should be part of the picture from the beginning. Technology alone is enough. You've already seen that one. If we don't consider the end user, we're not designing technologies that are accessible to everyone. We can't eliminate the human, even though AI is foremost in our minds these days. We still can't take the human out of the picture. Risk is not mode specific. That, I thought, was a key insight that several folks have had. And then from a legal perspective, which I had actually not thought about before, the human context is actually very important when you look at the legal aspects. You've heard a lot about crashes of automated vehicles, people being severely injured, and the whole idea of the human context is now being factored into the legal discussions. And inclusion is not a standard, it's a social imperative. So, a couple of things about what does the future look like? And I've been sort of studying some approaches. One of the biggest issues, and I think I'll end on this particular point, is when we work on ITS projects, we're focused on the technology. We bring teams together that can deal with different aspects of the technology. But the groups of companies and organizations that work on those technologies have not always worked with the human part of it. Disability groups, other kinds of vulnerable users of the technology, and they don't quite know how to work with those groups. So there are several, I think, very unique, this is my first bullet here, we need to have more tools to bring all of the collaborators together and for everyone collaborating on the project to feel comfortable as to how they deal with all the different people in the room, between public agencies, technology companies, regular people off the street. How do we all work together best? So we need more tools to do that. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Do you want to just stay here? We've got some questions coming in on Slido.
Oh, good.
So I'll just look at that. And thank you very much. I had a conversation with someone the other day working on a project which is including universal design, and made the point that actually probably all of us in this room spend 1 to 2 years in a wheelchair. We've just forgotten about it because we were infants And our mother was the one that was helping us navigate that mobility. But we already have, 99% of us probably spent 1 to 2 years in a wheelchair. We were just very lucky to have our mothers steering us around.
Exactly.
And they would have had to cope with all of those things. Yes. So, Slido. First question. I'm interested in what your thoughts are for our combined ITS professions in regards to better understanding our communities and cultures, to become more culturally aware and competent to make better decisions.
I love that question because that's kind of the essence of what I've been talking about. My thoughts are any funding that is provided for technology projects, ITS projects, should have to incorporate that within their project in order to receive funding. I'm seeing that happen a little bit in Europe, certainly not enough in the US. In fact, it's gone, unfortunately, the opposite way at the moment. But I think that is one way of making the community part of the project, is without bringing the community into a project, we're not going to make that available. We're going to use our available funding to focus on the technology. So that should be a requirement of funding.
Thank you. And we have another question come in. In a polarized political world we live in, truths and not so true truths, how important is data-enabled evidence to measure outcomes, and how do we in ITS encourage government, industry and researchers to better measure that evidence?
So obviously you can tell that I come from where I come from and how politically charged all of these things are right now in the US. And I think, again, having the right people in the room is truly important, but the message that you are sending in this world of untruths has to be clearly articulated by public agencies. And it's oftentimes, there's no way to stop politicizing something. But if you're using what you've heard from actual people off the street, that is going to be a much more compelling argument to trust the process that's being used. And there's no way to stop the politicizing things these days. In fact, I was particularly, I guess, disappointed when I heard about the decision at the World Cup. And even though I'm from the US, seems wrong in so many ways, but anyway, I think it's easy for the human side of things to become politicized. But if we've got those people in the room from the beginning, and those are the people helping us with the dissemination about these technologies, I think we can overcome that trust issue.
Thank you. So just a quick moment to send any through last questions. In the meanwhile, I have one.
Great.
New Zealand hosting the Asian ITS Congress last year. Have you seen any good examples of universal design for ITS from Asian countries?
That is an interesting question because that came up at the European Congress as well, because we're looking at our neighbors and trying to figure out I think Taiwan, for just one example, has been working more on accessible design for different ITS solutions. So that's one place. And I feel like our neighbors in Australia are doing a tremendous amount of work in that equitable design space. And there are several really good examples there. And in Japan, it's been a little slower in Japan because of some of the very aging infrastructure, but there is much more recognition because the population there is older. So there's, I think more recently, a lot of recognition that those obstacles in sort of, for example, a pole in the middle of a sidewalk. Someone in a wheelchair is not going to be able to pass. Something needs to be done about that. So.
Thank you. There's one more question come through.
Okay.
One of the challenges with heightened engagement is that it does not always lead to consensus and can be polarizing. 49% against 51%, for example.
Sure.
What sort of approaches can we take to avoid the marginalization of groups?
Yeah, it's so easy for that to happen, and no one likes conflict. So when we're sort of 49%, 51%, we still need to come together to discuss specifically why are we half and half. It's almost like having a whole nother discussion. Can we come to consensus? It is not an easy thing to do when we're at that point, but I think it suggests a lot more discussion, and a lot more discussion with everyone in the room, not just the individuals who are the most vocal, which is often what happens.